And we're back now with our top source tonight, former Trump White House aide Cassidy Hutchinson. And Cassidy, we were just talking about the immunity case and what that means. Trump is also going to be in court tomorrow back in New York in the criminal hush money case. He's been facing, accusations from the prosecutors that he violated the gag order. It seems pretty black and white that he did violate the gag order, but we're waiting on the judge to decide. And the emphasis has been he's just been attacking witnesses nonstop. And as someone who has been personally attacked by Donald Trump, what's the impact that has on your life?
I mean, in short, it's tremendous, and it's something that I think we have to take really seriously, and other witnesses coming forward have to take really seriously. I was really fortunate that when I made the decision to come forward and comply fully with the January 6th committee, that I was surrounded by a team of lawyers and advisors that really insulated and protected me. I knew what I was getting myself into when I left the Trump world, and regrettably, I knew that because I had once been part of that playbook. I know how they attack the people who they feel most threatened by, and they will do whatever means necessary to take them down and ruin their reputation and their image in the name of promoting Donald Trump. It's been difficult for me at points, and I wouldn't be honest with your viewers if I said otherwise. I have hard days still. But I think about other witnesses like Ruby Freeman and Shaye Moss, whose lives were upended during the 2020 election. I think about Rusty Bowers. I think about Brian Butler, who courageously came forward with you a couple of weeks ago, and he was interviewed in the Mar-a-Lago case, worked for Trump at Mar-a-Lago. He came forward now because he believes that the information that he has is really important for the American people to know and understand. That takes courage, because you do know that there are going to be negative impacts on your security situation, your potential future job prospects, people coming after you publicly, but also for your family. And that's, I think about people like that who don't have the resources, or they don't have the ability to protect themselves. When we talk about Donald Trump's how he's completely devoid of any leadership quality, that right there tells you who Donald Trump is. He wages attacks on the American people.
I'm so glad you brought up Brian Butler, because he's the former Mar-a-Lago employee who's now a witness in the classified documents investigation, kind of similar to a lot of people who work for Trump and then wind up in these investigations. And we asked about the impact that coming forward has. And this is what he told us about his concerns. Why are you speaking out publicly with your story now?
Instead of just waiting for it to just come out, I think it's better that I get to at least say what happened than it coming out in the news, people calling me like crazy. I'd rather just get it out there. And, the hope is at least I can move on with my life and get over this.
I mean, he kind of felt similar to how you do.
I have goosebumps sitting here. I remember watching the interview the night that it aired, and, it takes, at this point, it takes a lot to get me very emotional about some of the shortcomings of Trump world, just because at this point I expect a lot of it. But seeing him speak with you so candidly and openly about what he's gone through, how his decision process played out, but also how it was a difficult one. He did turn away from his friends in order to do the right thing. I hold him in really high regard, and I think that he's extremely courageous for doing what he did. And I think the American people owe him a thank you for that.
Yeah, he's lost friends over this. A co-conspirator of Trump's, a co-defendant, was one of his best friends. When you look at all of this, and as the judge in New York is deciding how to respond to Trump's, alleged violations of the gag order, is there anything that would hold him accountable for his attacks on these witnesses and even commenting on the jury?
I would like to say yes, but Donald Trump is going to leverage whatever the judge decides and use it as an opportunity to make himself a martyr in the situation. He's going to try to continue, in my view, stealing money from hardworking American people by fundraising off of this, by lying to them, and by spreading conspiracy theories, by playing on their greatest anxieties and fears, so he can win again, and so he can stay in power and potentially not have to go to prison for the rest of his life, because that's the reality of what he's facing. But when we talk about how to adequately handle it, it's really difficult. I think sometimes if sending him to prison is the right thing. Can you really limit his speech? I can't comment on the nuances of all of that. I think the greatest stride that we can take towards holding him accountable, though, is in this next election cycle, making sure that he never gets near the Oval Office again. But in the process of leading up to that, really talking to the American people about who he actually is.
He said that he questioned, I should say, whether you should be prosecuted because of a Secret Service agent who could not corroborate your testimony of something that you said you were told by the White House, Deputy Chief of Operations at the time, Tony Ornato. And he's gone after you publicly, as you've spoken out bravely. I wonder if seeing him attack these other witnesses right now as this case is going on, how does that make you feel about potentially having to be a witness in a Trump trial one day?
It depends on the day. Some days I feel like I've gone through the worst, and I kind of know what to expect at this point, but then a day will happen where you realize it probably can get worse. I try not to lament too much on hypotheticals of what could or could not happen. I would expect, I can't say it definitively, but I would expect at some point, if these investigations continue to be called as a witness, and again, I would comply fully, willingly, and faithfully, because I believe that's my duty as an American citizen. But in saying that too, what I fear more than his attacks on me is what would happen if I didn't continue to speak the truth. I don't love being a public figure all of the time. It is difficult, and not only because of Trump, but just managing what is coming from him and his allies and supporters.
And you're
and his
27 years
enablers.
old. I should
Correct,
note.
but I also think, when we look at America, we rely on public servants and the American people to uphold our institutions and our Constitution. And what scares me more is the fact that this could potentially be the final election of our American democracy as we know it if he's reelected.
Cassidy Hutchinson, thank you for joining me tonight.
Thank you for having me back, Caitlin.
Thank you.